How well does Siri play with Bluetooth? Is Ford reprogramming its DCT gearboxes? And what are your favorite EQ settings on your car stereo? All that and more on this week's episode of CNET Roadside Assistance. This is the show where we take a minute to answer your questions and read your comments. I'm Antuan Goodwin alongside Wayne Cunningham with Mitchell Chang on the controls. Let's jump right into it. This first question is pretty interesting. This comes in from Mason, Salt Lake City, not the rapper. It says, "Hi guys, I have a 2004 350Z, which I love. It has the factory Bose stereo system in it. And I'm no audiophile, so this works great for me. However, it's beginning to come up on about 10 years old, and there's no aux input, let alone Bluetooth or other connectivity. I've even tried the adapters with the cassette on the end. Aside from FM units, which are hard to use in the city, is there anything I might not be aware of that would work? Love the show. Mason, Salt Lake City."
Yeah, I remember when just 2005, 2006, finding an aux input in a car was actually practically a miracle.
Oh, yeah. I had a car of about that same generation. My RSX Type S was an '04, and it had a Bose system in it. Similar situation here. I just gave up and used tape adapters for everything. That was before I was a car tech editor.
That's true. This is a question we get a lot, actually, is how can I hook up my iPod or whatever to my car?
Right. And so the interesting thing about Bose systems of that vintage is that usually they consist of two parts. You've got your head unit, which may have like a 6-disc in-dash changer and a tape deck, your radio and all of that. And that sends a preamplified signal to an external amplifier, which is underneath your seat somewhere, usually underneath the passenger seat, and maybe under the driver's seat. I'm not sure. And then that amplifies the audio before it sends it ultimately out to the rest of your speakers in your car. So there's actually a couple of ways that you can couple of different places that you can kind of get in between those signals to kind of interject your audio. The easiest way that actually require zero cutting and very little rewiring is, instead of using a wireless FM transmitter, use a wired FM modulator that would actually plug in line between the car's antenna and the antenna port on the back of your car stereo. So it's a physical connection. It can send a stronger signal since it's not FCC regulated. And you can even actually overpower weak radio stations with a good wired FM modulator. So there's one option that you've got there. The other option are going to be integration kits that may take advantage of. I'm not sure if the 350Z has a satellite radio input, but the integration kits sometimes take advantage of that, basically by piggybacking and pretending to be a satellite radio receiver and allowing you to select stations or artists as stations that way.
And that'd be a connection on the back of the head unit itself. Yeah.
Again. And
they might have other connections back there for maybe a CD changer, if that was I don't know if that was an in-dash unit in this car or a one of those cartridge things or something like that.
Again, I'm kind of thinking that it may have been a 6-disc in-dash changer, if anything. If it's either a single disc in-dash or an in-dash changer. I think by '04 most automakers were ditching the external CD changers and everything except minivans.
Yeah. I just looked this up, actually. The amp should be located in the far left trunk corner, it says. So there's actually a lot of good online stuff about where to find this, where to find the equipment in your car.
Even easier to reach,
I
would think. Just pop the hatch and pull up a couple of panels. You don't have to take your seat out or, contort yourself upside down like I did when I was doing that. Because that brings us to the last way that you could add all sorts of integration to your system is actually by interrupting the signal that comes from the receiver and then between the receiver and the amplifier. So you would use something like a DSP or a line-out converter or anything, basically, you cut the wires that basically come off of the back of the receiver. You insert this device in line between it and the amp, and then basically then you'd be able to add whatever you wanted. The one that I'm thinking of right now is the Rockford Fosgate. I think it's called the 362. It's got a weird name. Rockford Fosgate. But basically what this allows you to do is it does a number of things. First of all, it's a DSP. It's actually called the 360. 60 is actually a three. The word 60.3. It's a 8-channel DSP. So the first thing that it does, what it's designed to do, is actually allow you to tune the audio. So it gets the signal that's coming out of the receiver, it cleans it up, and then it allows you to kind of tweak the sound the way that you want. But what's interesting about this particular unit is that it also has the ability to do things like add auxiliary inputs. You can add a Bluetooth module that allows you to do audio streaming, A2DP wireless streaming also. I'm not sure. Was he using an iPod?
He doesn't really specify what he's
Doesn't
looking
really specify.
for. Yeah, just wants something to connect. Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could put like maybe an iPod cable or iPod adapter into this.
You could, yeah. You'd have to. You could go. I think you'd just use the auxiliary input in that case.
Yeah.
So it's actually an interesting way to add that. The problem with this method, if you're not interested in really kind of getting in and playing with the 31 band EQ and plugging your laptop up to it via USB and really kind of tweaking the phase delay between the channels, is that you're paying $700 to add an auxiliary input and Bluetooth to your car. So it's not exactly the most cost-effective way to do it. The most cost-effective way would probably be like a cheap integration kit.
Yeah, and Mace points out he's not an audiophile, so probably doesn't want to tweak all the. I don't know. Maybe he could become an audiophile by tweaking all the.
Or you could just keep using the tape adapter until the tape player dies, which it'll inevitably do. They all do. I think
it'd be easy to change that head unit out in this car. Or is that a fairly well integrated?
It's just a Bose receiver. It should pop right out.
Yeah.
It's just once you pop the receiver out, then you've also got to pop out the Bose amp, which, I mean, most receivers have integrated amplifiers anyway that put out a reasonable amount of power.
Yeah.
That's a couple of options that I think we've actually probably discussed on the show before, but your mileage may vary. It just really depends on how deep into it you want to get. If you just don't care about audio quality, but you want something that's easy to install and maybe even easy to yank out, wired FM modulator is probably going to be the best thing for a non-audiophile.
Right. We've got a voicemail. This is actually commenting on a question we answered last week about Ruben Sandwich was looking for new tires for his Kia, and we were wondering, why does he need new tires on a new Kia?
Hey, CNET guys. It's Ruben over here from Boston. Ruben Sandwich. I just use the sandwich because it's more memorable than Ruben. But I'm just getting back to you guys. It is a 2011 Kia Optima FX, and the reason I decided to buy new tires, even though my car only has 6,000 miles on it, was because a lot of here in Massachusetts, we call them math holes. They tend to shift lanes without directionals, and you have to stop short. And so, long story short, a woman decided to pull that on me, and I braked, even with electronic stability control, ABS, and all these other technologies in the car. The car just slid into the back of her. No damage was done, thanks to the spike strip in the front of my car, which is a great thing for parallel parking. But, yeah, that's the biggest reason I had to get rid of them. And so I actually went with the Puntenza 970 AS, I believe they are. And I actually got them, had to take them back because they gave me the wrong tire size. And I wound it up with Continental Extreme Contacts DWS, which has the DWS etched into the tire itself, not on the sidewalls, but the actual tires. So as soon as your S disappears, you no longer have S snow traction. The W disappears, you no longer have wet traction. And if your D disappears, then you have no more dry traction. Love the show, guys. Thanks for that last shout-out on that show. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, so it seems that Ruben was looking for really grippy tires, I guess, was his really need here.
Which is probably why he went with those Bridgestone Pretenzas at the beginning, because those are, a lot of people use those for like autocrossing. Mm-hmm. Not that particular one, but the Bridgestone Potenza brand. You see that a lot of times.
Yeah, and I guess the not only to avoid sliding into cars are all over the road, but I guess also that in Massachusetts you're dealing with weather.
Yeah, and I mean, depending on how the ABS system is tuned, I mean, the point of ABS is actually, it keeps you from sliding, but then it does so by basically letting go of the brakes every couple of milliseconds.
Yeah.
So the idea is that adding more grip may decrease your stopping distances. It may actually not. It just really depends on how short you need to stop. But yeah, I always maintain that tires are the best upgrade that you can make to a car.
Right. Of course, with one of these, as he describes, mass holes, if they cut into you too quickly, I mean, there's nothing you can do in many of
sometimes
these
there's
situations.
just literally nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing you can do about that. I do think that's interesting, the wear indicator on those tires, where I think he said it's actually imprinted on the tread of the tire, and that if once you start seeing the letters disappear, then you basically are changing the rating of the vehicle, because the rating of the wheel, the tire, because you have less, less the profile of the tread depth changes.
Yeah, and that's a great little detail, and something they'd put on a quality tire as opposed to, I guess, something that's just cranked out to get the lowest price for.
Right. I really miss those tires that had like colored strips molded into them.
Oh yeah.
And so when you did a burnout, you could leave like a nice,
right.
nice colored.
I don't think you're gonna do too many burnouts in a Kia Optima SX.
It's an SX. You might.
Maybe. Front tires spinning radically.
Exactly. If you could do a burnout in the Yaris, you can do a burnout in. Anyway.
Have you done a burnout in the Yaris?
Anyway,
Moving
the next
on.
email comes from Larry D. He says, I'm looking to replace the head unit in my 2003 Toyota Sequoia. I put a Kenwood unit in my wife's 2000 Maxima so she can use the hands-free Bluetooth. The great folks at Crutchfield set me up, and she loves it. Back to the Sequoia, I went hands-free too, but the old US spec iPod interface has to go. He noticed that Crutchfield's website shows a lot of units that are available for pre-order. Are these units that were announced at CES or something? He's not used to pre-order sort of thing, and he also wonders if we have a recommendation for under the $400 price range. Bluetooth and iPhone are the only requirements. So it doesn't sound like he wants to replace the stereo. It just kind of sounds like he wants to add Bluetooth and an iPhone, or if technically it'd be iPod connectivity.
Right, an adapter.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts on the pre-orders? I think maybe
the whole car stereo realm is I mean, it may have gotten hit a little bit by some. There was the disasters last year in Asia, and maybe that hit these problems or this industry a little bit. But I don't know. I mean, these are very specialty parts, so I don't think there was a ton of new stuff shown at CES. They certainly still have like a lot of stuff from the previous generation still available. So maybe it was just a glitch in Crutchfield's supply. Yet I don't know. I don't think there's any particular reason why there's a lot of stuff that we've seen and it's not available just yet, but it will be soon. I think
sometimes there's like just R&D time built into it, and the iPhone 4S is still relatively new, not in the tech world, but to some company that's making a kit that they're trying to figure out a way that, as we'll talk in a second, make sure that Siri works with it, or any number of things could be the reasons why these things get held up. It may actually just be that the Sequoia is just not a high priority vehicle for a lot of these manufacturers, your Scotias and your Mitras, and they just maybe haven't gotten around to doing it yet. They're too busy designing Camaro integration kits that have touchscreens on them. So it could be any number of reasons.
Yeah, a lot of the adapters though are fairly universal. I mean, you talked about the US spec iPod adapter, or I'm not sure which one he's got. I don't know what his problem with that one is. Maybe it's just like a set adapter or something, but some of them have been pretty good. But if he wants to replace the whole head unit, which may be the thing, I didn't quite get that from his email. But I think one thing he points out here is he had a very easy time replacing his wife's head unit. So I think he's got that upgrade bug now, and which is a good thing. And I think more people need to realize how frankly easy it can be to upgrade a head unit in a car and get iPhone connectivity, Bluetooth connectivity, all this stuff for really fairly cheap. I mean, you've seen head units at $150, $200. You get all this pretty advanced stuff. that if you optioned it in a new car, it might cost you, $600,000.
Right. And yeah, the interesting thing is that for a Toyota that generation, like the mounting kits, like the actual bracket that you would use to hold a receiver in, usually about $12 or $15. But I'm thinking that because I don't know if he's just trying to keep it under $400, he can get a new stereo and a kit that has Bluetooth and iPod connectivity. That'll probably be better than what's already in there. The world's your oyster. If you want to go single din, you can't get anything above $400. So just find something that you like. Sony's got kits that have Bluetooth built into it. They're sort of tune tray kits. Pioneer's got a couple of them. Alpine does a really good job with their sort of mechless receivers. You'll be pushing right up on your $400 price point there, but I think pretty much any single DIN receiver that I've ever recommended on the show will probably work for that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of options. I guess the big thing you want to consider right now is, would you want to go mechless or not? I mean, do you still want to play CDs, or are you over that? You just want to bring in your iPod, iPhone, whatever, and hook that up. Yeah, there's an amazing amount. I'm not seeing a lot of stuff that says pre-order. There's certainly a mix of in stock and out of stock and whatnot on the Crutchfield site, which is just, that is the go-to place for any of this kind of upgrading you want to do.
And if you wanted to keep your stock stereo and you just wanted to add iPod control and add Bluetooth to your vehicle, but to keep the stock stereo, the one that I've recommended on a number of occasions is the Dice Media Bridge, DICE. Their media bridge for Toyota is $270, $280, and it basically plugs into the satellite radio receiver on the back of your stereo and gives you iPod, Bluetooth. You can keep your satellite radio if you have it by piggybacking through it, and then you also get an auxiliary input. So it pretty much adds just about everything that you'd want and a little bit more. And then the interesting thing about that is that if you get the right adapter for it, I think you can keep your steering wheel controls for things like volume, skip, and if there's a mute button, you get that also.
Nice. So probably with that, you'd need to do a little wiring behind the head unit and under the
plugs in. It's like a harness.
Yeah.
So it's just like you take the dashboard apart, plug it in, and you're good to go.
Right. Maybe a few wires underneath the carpet or whatever to get the adapter into maybe the center console if you want it there, or maybe put it in the glove box. Which
maybe.
Yeah.
But if you're going wireless, you using Bluetooth for everything.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
That last part is even optional.
I always think of plugging in just because I've got an iPod or iPhone, so it's
plugging in is good.
Yeah,
definitely good. But that's just like one. Usually, you could kind of drape that kind of through the back of the glove compartment without having to cut anything.
Yeah,
and then just kind of have that pigtail hanging out. That's what I do.
We've got another question about a Toyota Tundra. This is from Rene B. Renee says, "Good day, gentlemen. I recently purchased a 2012 Toyota Tundra double cab. Looking for a good, decent backup camera because it's hard to see directly behind me due to the truck's size. My truck has factory Bluetooth, aux, and USB ports, but no large screened head unit, so standard radio display. I'm looking at the Magellan 9055 LM with wireless backup camera or a wired rear view backup system from Costco by Rearview Safety. I prefer a wireless system and also one that's not going to cost me an arm and a leg." And he mentions he also has the Droid Bionic and is curious if there's any way he can connect the camera wirelessly to his phone and use that as his backup view, I guess.
No. You can't connect not without doing some serious modding. I don't think there's a turnkey solution for that. But your question as to whether the Magellan is good and the backup camera is good, I actually just got both of them in this week. So I'll be testing the Magellan 9055 LM and its wireless backup camera this week. You'll be able to see the full review on CNET Car Tech sometime next week. So I'll let you know whether it's worth it.
And that's the one that integrates with the PND, with the navigation device.
So you got your Magellan navigation, and then the camera is actually universal. On one end, there's the camera that it actually gets its power from 12 volt in the back of your car. I think you basically tap into the rear view lights of your car. That's how it knows you're backing up. And then on the other end, you've got the wireless receiver that basically just has a video out. So you can kind of plug it into anything.
Right.
So if you decide to upgrade your head unit to like a Pioneer or an Alpine, you could probably keep the camera at that point, and then take advantage of the in-dash display. So I like how that they've done that modularly. I'm sure they would prefer that you buy the Magellan P&D, but I like that they didn't lock you into that. So, but just stay tuned for that. I'll let you know whether that combo is worth the money.
Right. And would you recommend wireless or wired? What would be your preference?
Wired's best, but I mean the wireless systems. The last time I tested a wireless system was about 2 years ago, and I ran into an issue where I was when I was driving around, I would occasionally pick up video feeds from security cameras because they use the same wireless protocol. I don't know if the new systems have fixed that, but this was like an old AudioVox system about 2 years ago, and I could just park my car around the corner from our offices and see the security camera from a design firm that's nearby. And then the next alley over, if I parked in that alley, I could watch TV because they had some sort of like a wireless cable box or something. And I could just watch the Food Network with no sound on this tiny 2.5-inch screen. So we'll see if they fix that. Obviously, a wired system takes a little bit more effort to wire because you've got to run the cable through the body of the vehicle.
Yeah, that's the long distance. That's the full distance. Yeah, of the car.
But it is like a solid connection for starters, and you only have to do it once. So I think that it's worth the effort. But I mean, for ease of installation, the wireless is definitely the way to go.
And one thing I like too with this kind of system, or one good way to go here too, is you can get these mirrors, rear view mirrors that actually have a screen. A small LCD integrated into the rear view mirror. Mm-hmm. And so when you do put the car in the backup, that screen lights up, and suddenly you're getting that view, and you're actually looking in the same place you would normally look when you're backing up.
Over your shoulder?
Well, that's one place you should be looking up. I don't know. Maybe you could have a screen back. Other ways to do that. But yeah, so that image pops up in your rear view mirror, so you can just look up there and get a fuller view behind you than you would get in the just using the mirror itself. Mm-hmm. And I assume that Magellan would work with some of those mirrors that are out there.
Yeah, you just have to like run the connection. It would just be a matter of installing the wireless receiver in the right place and running the connection. The problem with those is that usually the image is about 2 inches diagonally. This is a big old, what is this, like 6 inches?
Yeah,
7 inches. Holy crap.
That's a huge screen on that.
It's going to look so stupid on the Avail's dashboard. So yeah, you got like a bigger screen there, and if you're in a big old truck and your windshield's pretty far away, having that little bit of extra real estate couldn't hurt.
So now, what about an A2DP kit that'll work with Siri?
So yeah, we got an email from Jim. He says, I'm looking for a car kit to wirelessly stream audio from my iPhone. I will be using the line in on my car stereo. So it needs a microphone, mainly to use Siri. Of course, it needs to work with Siri. I would also like either a line in or cable connection for my iPod so I can charge the phone and get a better hardwire connection for longer trips. What do you guys recommend? I started laughing halfway through that. Because I just realized that he said that he'll be plugging this into the line in on a stereo, but he needs something that has a line in. I thought that was a little funny.
He said wirelessly stream audio from his phone.
So the easiest way to do that, I got props today.
All right.
So the easiest way to do that would be this little thing right here. And this is the Extreme Mac In Charge Auto BT. Now, it looks like a power cable, but instead of a USB port or a 30-pin, you've got this auxiliary connection. Now, there's a little pinhole mic on the top of it, and there's a button that activates your iPhone's voice control. So if you get in your car and Siri's activated and you're Bluetooth paired to this device, you can hit that button, Siri will come up, and you'll be able to talk to her just like you normally would. It also has a 2-amp USB connection on the back of it, and it comes with a 30-pin dot cable, so you can actually plug your phone up to it to charge while you're doing all of this for longer trips. Now, of course, if you need it to plug directly into the stereo, you'd have to unplug this. But I mean, it's actually a very simple way to kind of do that. There's actually a full review of this device up over on the CarTech blog.
That's the Extreme Mac BT.
Extreme Mac In Charge Auto BT.
Okay.
And for your uses, it's probably the simplest way to do that. Of course, you'd probably want to, also get like a suction cup or something and mount your phone where you can see it, because this doesn't have like a display and it doesn't integrate with the car stereo or anything. It's literally just a Bluetooth to line in input. Another option would be something like the Scosche Motor Mouth 2, and this basically is a tiny little microphone shaped thing that you would plug into your car's auxiliary input. Again, this would kind of stick out of the dashboard like a little wart. The trick is that if the Bluetooth will allow you to access your phone's voice controls without its own voice controls, then you can access Siri. If it is something like a Parrot kit that has its own native voice command, when you hit the voice button and it steps in and does its own thing, then you'll need to have physical access to the phone so you can hold down the home key.
Right.
So those are the two ways to do it. These are very simple kits. They don't have voice command built into them. So when you hit the voice button on them, they defer to the phone.
Right. And so that'll activate your Siri right then.
Right.
Yeah.
The only thing is the Scosche Motor Mouth has a little bit, actually a lot better microphone, but it doesn't self-charge. It has a battery in it. You have to charge it up every couple of days, and it also won't charge your phone. That's why I think the Extreme Max solution is probably going to be the best for what you want it to do.
Yeah, it is a little bit inconvenient having to take the thing out of your car and charge it up when.
And it looks like a power cable, so no one's going to break in your car and steal it. You just leave it in there all the time.
Right. The Extreme Mac one. Yeah, it definitely looks like a good solution. Definitely should do what Jim is looking for here. We got another email from Kevin, which follows on a discussion we had, I don't know, it was last week or a couple weeks ago. He says, Kevin writes that we were talking about the Ford Focus and Fiesta cars and the dual clutch transmission and how customers thought there was something wrong with the clunks when you start moving again from a stoplight. He says he purchased a 2012 Ford Focus SE with the fuel saver package and was never familiar with the DC2 unit, a dual clutch transmission unit, before this. He says when he took it to the Ford dealer here in Tacoma, Washington, and asked about the DCT, he told me they test drove it and reprogrammed the computer. As to which computer, the transmission or the sync upgrade, I wasn't told. But the records online show it was the sync upgrade in March 2012. He says he noticed a difference in gas mileage after the dealer reprogrammed the computer compared to what they didn't mess with the car, and I'm not even sure if they actually did anything at all, and just that they reprogrammed the computer to make the customer feel satisfied. And he says he doesn't want to trade the car back in, or they don't want him to trade the car back in. A little vague on the ending there. But what they did is, I don't think they did any reprogramming in the transmission. I think they reprogrammed Sync, which is an upgradable system. And Kevin, you could have probably done that yourself even if you didn't want to run to the dealer. Yeah, I don't think something like I mean, they can change the software in that transmission, or they can upgrade or reprogram the software in that transmission, but it's not something they're going to do very often. And those cars have really just come off the line. I think Ford is probably pretty satisfied with those right now. I haven't heard of any recalls or anything like that about getting those transmissions reprogrammed at this point. And I assume that is something they could actually do the dealer, but that is a pretty in-depth thing. Whereas reprogramming Sync is fairly easy, and that's something we've done here at the office.
Right. There actually any number of factors could contribute to your increase in gas mileage. Season could have changed.
Yeah.
Density of the air is different. You may be getting used to the car, and just like your inputs could be smoothing out over time. That could also contribute to the perceived smoother sort of clunk. So it's like if you when you pull away from a light, if you do something and you get a weird clunk, you may not realize it, but your behavior changes a little bit, and so you could just be getting used to the car. Or, I mean, maybe they did do some magic. Maybe you've just got like Dominic Toretto from the Fast and the Furious is like works at your dealership, and he just like gave you a little something extra.
A little performance upgrade in there, a little performance software.
I mean, it could have been, but I very seriously doubt it. I think it's probably your behavior and your environment are changing as they're wont to do, and it's just you're kind of getting a placebo. Is what you're feeling. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, something like reprogramming Sync is probably going to happen maybe, or an upgrade to Sync could, software upgrade could happen maybe every year or a couple times a year. But a transmission software upgrade, that's more something that's not going to happen. That's going to be like more every 2 or 3 or 4 year thing, if it ever happens.
Maybe I haven't heard anything of Ford responding to this, but there was a lot of hoopla about like those gearboxes when they first came out. So I mean, it's not completely out of the realm of realism that maybe Ford quietly did something. They just haven't made a big deal out of it.
They certainly could have, yeah. But also, if it shows on the, he mentions his online.
And if you went to syncmyride.com, it's not going to show.
Yeah.
A transmission upgrade. It's only going to show the sync upgrades.
Exactly.
So I don't know which website he went to. I'd be willing to bet it's the Sync My Ride website, though, because that's the only place I know where those bulletins for upgrades are posted.
Absolutely.
Got another email from Ryan. It says, regarding audio settings, I noticed that on the car tech videos, you guys sometimes have the bass and treble settings a little higher than the center position. Do you have a go-to setting for all those audio options when you test a car to try and create the best sound? Also, do you guys ever consider publishing a list or a video about the best factory, not aftermarket, car stereo systems? So for me, when I get into a car, the first thing I do is set everything to flat.
Same here.
Ride around, listen to that for a while, and then if something doesn't sound right, or if I'm listening to kind of music and I want to bring out something in that music, or if I'm listening to a lot of audio podcasts, then I get in and play with the settings and try to make it sound better. But I try to at least give everything a couple of days on flat, just a flat with no balance correction, no fader correction. One of the things that I hate the most about getting in a car is when I get in and someone set the fader all the way to the rear speakers. It's like that's the one thing you don't want a car stereo to do, and that they actually try to engineer out of, because cars used to have like their 2 mid ranges down by your feet and then 2 that sat in the parcel shelf, and so they've been moving speaker placement and adding tweeters to the front to kind of bring the sound in front of you and raise it up to eye level. And the first thing people do, I don't know who does it, but whenever we get a new car in, it's always set like 3 or 4 ticks to the rear.
Right. When I start listening to music in a car, start testing the stereo, I do the same thing. I immediately look at those tone settings and equalize it out to flat, just to get. I mean, that's the default setting that the audio engineers at the car company set it at, and that's what they tuned it for, and so that's what they think the best sound should be.
Right.
And so yeah, that's sort of our standard testing procedure here.
But then sometimes you're like riding around, like in the Wrangler, you got it set to flat. You're riding around, you're listening to a variety of musics, and then one day you just want to listen to a bunch of dubstep, but there's too much space. It's like.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like stupid to say this, but there's almost too much bass to listen to bass-heavy music from that Wrangler's audio system. It's got an Infinity system with a powered sub, and the cabin is basically just all hard plastic. So it's just really echoey and boomy, and that's great if you've got the top down, but when you're riding with the top up, you kind of want to turn the bass down a couple of ticks. So it really depends on the vehicle.
Yeah.
Same thing with Rockford Fosgate systems.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Turn that all the way up.
Those are notoriously bass heavy. And this is something I do too. After listening to it on flat for a while, if I notice it's, say, either too bassy or too trebly, like an example was the Acura when they rolled out that new ELS system. I noticed that was really nice, crisp highs, but it just really seemed it was tuned for acoustic music. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to see, well, if I listen to the music that I generally like to listen to, let me see if I can actually tune it for that. So I changed the settings and did find it actually did have bass. It did have a richer response that you could find in that tuning, but you did have to set the tone controls.
And then some of the best ones have like their preset EQ curves.
Yeah.
Like like pop or country. I don't know how they decide which genres get their own EQ curves, but I mean, like you get a rock setting, or if you're in the 2012 Toyota Yaris, you get music and talk.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah, there's only 2 settings there. Actually, personally, I found my preference in any EQ is to boost the treble a little bit and boost the bass just a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Leave the center flat. And sometimes if there is those 3 bands, I can even sometimes lower the center like 1 or 2 ticks and boost the bass 1 or 2 ticks, leave the treble at the same.
I think it just depends on what you're listening to that week and the nature of that stereo.
Yeah.
Because there's no like magic setting that works for everything. And it just really depends on if you're like if I'm listening to a lot of jazz, then it's maybe not important that the bass overpower. It's actually important that the bass does not overpower. Or even different kinds of jazz, something with a lot of double bass. You kind of want to maybe bring that to the forefront so you kind of, feel the beat, but, something that's a little more meandering piano.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. You want something more balanced.
Let's move on to our last question here that we can cover today. This is we were talking about the Dearman engine earlier, and he's we don't have a name for this emailer here, but he says we're talking about the Dearman engine. This is the engine that it uses two opposing cylinders. They actually have the explosion between the two cylinders, and it pushes the two cylinders apart. And he says, we was talking to, right, he says he remembers back in the 1940s and early 50s, a guy made a modification to a car the same weight as a first-gen Hummer. He essentially used a propane tank in the trunk and humidified air to help push pistons inside the engine without burning as much gasoline, giving it more miles per gallon. The guy who test drove the car with him claimed it went about 200 miles on a gallon of gas, saying they drained the tank, went across the street to the station, only filled 2.5 gallons in the tank. Of course, like most of these investors, they seem to disappear or die mysteriously, something to do with oil companies not wanting this technology to be made. This is like a classic conspiracy theory here. I remember we have had solar panels since the 1960s back on NASA's projects, but it wasn't a big deal for consumers until the last 15 years or so. Keep good work. Love the show. So what do we think about this this car that ran on propane and gasoline and humidified air?
It depends on what you bring into the situation as far as your biases. Because I look at situations like this and I think, all right, cool. Here's a very novel and interesting way to get 200 miles per gallon out of a vehicle the size of a Hummer. Okay, now shrink that down and fit it into a Civic.
Oh, yeah.
Probably not going to happen. Solar panels have been around for years on NASA's project. NASA had unlimited funds, and it's nearly unlimited funds near its beginning, but solar panels are only just now starting to get to the point where they make economical sense for anybody.
Yeah, they were very expensive and not very efficient either.
They're still not very efficient.
Yeah, they've been growing in efficiency. I was actually talking to some guys from Stanford who work with solar cars, actually, and they said that efficiency is growing about 1% to 2% per year, which is, a slow progression.
But it's like you could cover the roof of a Prius and only have enough power to run the air conditioner.
Yeah. You're not getting a lot of juice out of those. And with this car that used propane, I mean, if it burned a whole tank of propane and only a gallon of gas, it might get 200 miles, but propane's fuel. It's
clean burn, energy efficient propane.
Yeah. Yeah, you can certainly, there's certainly a lot of inventions out there. I guess the most current one that I've heard about a lot is this idea of electrolyzing hydrogen in your car using the electric system, forcing that hydrogen into the fuel lines, and having that combust in the cylinders along with the gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit of a perpetual energy type of thing here. So some people claim that it actually gets better fuel economy, but I think there's studies online that say, no, it doesn't really give you anything significant.
Is that like the equivalent of like putting a turbine on the front of a boat and saying that it powers itself?
Right. Didn't Mythbusters try to do that? I think they did try to do something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just seems a little weird. Friction comes into play and eventually you stop moving.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all the time we have here for Roadside Assistance. If you have if you have questions for us you want us to talk about next week, you can email us at cartech@cnet.com. You can read the show notes from the show we've just completed here, Cartech, at our blog site for this show, cartech.cnet.com, or look at the show notes for our other show, Cartech Live. You can give us calls, leave us voicemails like Ruben did at 866-401-CNET. That's 866-401-2638. You can also follow us on Twitter. Brian Cooley, who's not here today, he's just Brian Cooley, BrianCooley on Twitter. I am Wayforn, WAY4NE on Twitter. And
it's easier to write than it is to say, isn't it?
It really is. Antoine is Antgoo, ANTGOO on Twitter. And you can also look at our our full-on CarTech Twitter feed, CNET CarTech, CNET CARTECH.